thank you so much for joining me on Wired Women Show. Can you please introduce yourself to our viewers just for the sake of them understanding who you are?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Jennifer, for inviting me on. It was a pleasant surprise to receive the invitation. So yes, my name is Ruthie Bowles, and I'm the founder of Defy The Status Quo, which is a content marketing consultancy. I work with B2B consulting firms and professional service businesses, helping them with everything from their content marketing strategy to actually pushing out and creating the content, blogs, ebooks, white papers, case studies, things like that. I am also a mom to 4, 3 boys and 1 girl, and they are 8, 5.5, 4, and 2. And I am a U.S. Army veteran. I served for 8.5 years. I did a 12-month deployment in Afghanistan where I met my husband. And while I was serving, I also did, I did like 6 or 7 fitness competitions. So I did bodybuilding competitions while I was serving. And I was all over the United States as a part of the course of my military duties. But now we live in Maryland on 2 acres between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. And I run my business full time, and I love it.
Amazing. So you're what they call a mompreneur. So you run a business at home and you're also an entrepreneur. That's amazing. But I'm really so interested about your military background, because I don't think that I've actually ever interviewed anyone with that kind of background. So that kind of really intrigued me about you. So can you please tell our viewers just a little bit insight on how you transformed yourself from being in the military to being a businesswoman?
Yes, sure. So I served, like I said, I served for 8.5 years. I got to what we call it E6, but it basically is enlisted rank 6. So I was a staff sergeant in the Army, and I joined right out of high school. And I was a Persian Farsi translator and intelligence analyst. So I work in the military intelligence community, which offers the opportunity for a lot of joint service work. So I worked with a lot of Navy and Air Force and Marine personnel as well as civilians too. And I went to language school for probably about a year to learn Persian Farsi, because I never knew it. I'm not Persian. And so they teach it to you based on an aptitude that you did demonstrate through a test. And so I was in California for about a year, and then went to Texas and Arizona and Kentucky and Georgia. So I was all over the place. And I was a staff sergeant pretty early on. I was a staff sergeant by the time I was 22.
Wow.
Which was pretty fast.
Yeah.
But I saw a lot of opportunity to fix things and to make things better for other people by assuming, more authority. And so because those opportunities were presented to me to have that authority, I took them.
Yeah.
And that was probably my first taste of, getting that power, if you will, but also taking it and using it to make things better for other people. I'm also a military sexual trauma survivor. And that is actually a pretty important part of my story, because I was able to use those experiences to make things better for other soldiers in my unit. And that was always really important to me. Mm. And yeah, so that's the kind of the short version of the story, honestly.
Amazing. Before we started recording, we had a conversation, you and I, both a pre-recording session, where we talked about the fact that you are now in Maryland, which is an amazing property which you have, and how you are juggling between being a mom, a wife, as well as being an entrepreneur. And I did ask you, and that's at the point where we decided we needed to record this for our viewers. I needed to know, what are the attributes, your power tools that you've got to have to be able to have that mindset where you can just re-innovate yourself and reinvent yourself to become a successful businesswoman like yourself. What kind of advice would you give to our viewers?
First and foremost, you need to really believe, even if your dream is not super concrete, you need to really believe that you deserve the happiness that's out there for you. Yeah. And so that was what led me to quit my very comfortable federal contracting job, because after I got out of the Army, I was a federal contractor. Mm-hmm. Even though my dream wasn't super solid, I knew that I deserved to be happy, that I had worked too hard to accept anything less. And that is what gave me the belief and energy to go ahead and quit that job for the, it had a great salary, the benefits. It wasn't likely that I was ever going to be fired or anything. Like it was very comfortable. It was very secure. So in order to get out of that secure space where I couldn't even say that things were completely horrible, except the fact that I had no upward growth possibilities, I had to believe 100% that I deserved the happiness that I felt was out there for me. Mm. And if you don't, then, because entrepreneurship is a leap of faith. Even if you've got the investors or you've got the money, it's still a leap of faith to go out there and potentially fail. And that is, I think, the true mark of entrepreneurship is that if you do something, it could fail.
Yeah, and
there is a chance
forward as well, isn't it?
Yes,
so you're
yes.
failing while you've already started, and it doesn't matter where you're at.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, amazing. And we did talk about this in our pre-show conversation as well. We're talking about challenging the status quo and how much of an upward battle and an uphill climb for you as a woman. Tell me about the time when you were serving in the military and when you got that aha moment that you realized that you couldn't go any further in the military, but also we were talking about in terms of how you're not getting any help when you left for the 12 weeks.
That was, so after I left the military, I became a federal contractor, and that was when they stopped. Like, that was when my upward growth, there was no possibilities. So I was doing the same job that I did in the military. I was doing it as a federal contractor. I was translating and, working on intelligence. And they grouped us together in teams based on our language, which is logical. But my team had one leadership position, and it was filled. And I had a great leader. She was a fantastic mentor, and I really liked her, but I still wanted to move up. When I was in the military, I got accustomed to, okay, moving up. And people told me how it was I could do that. And so I did. But then I was told, like, there really isn't a way for you to move up because we already have this person in this spot and there's really nothing else for you to do. And that really bothered me. And around that time, I had also found out I was pregnant with our fourth child. And we had purchased our house in Maryland, and I didn't enjoy driving away from this house that we had worked so hard to buy.
Yeah.
And so I started to imagine what it would be like if I was working from home. And I had started freelance writing part-time for different companies. And I just started imagining what it would be like if I could do that full time. And so I decided that I would use my FMLA, that's what we call it in the United States. So it's a Family Medical Leave Act, I think is what it stands for. But basically it makes it so your company has to give you 12 weeks of unpaid leave due to the birth of a child. You can also get it for the adoption of a child, or if you have to care for like a sick parent or a sick child. So there's a variety of ways that you can use that. But a lot of people think about it in the context of being pregnant and having a child, but it's unpaid. And the United States, among its peers in the world, it's the only one that has that. Like if you look at European countries, Canada, I think Canada offers like 9 months of paid leave.
Yeah,
after you have a child.
6 months over here. I'm not sure, but I'll have to check. Yeah.
Right. And the United States is like, yeah, you pushed out a human. That's really not a big deal. We need you to come back to work. Because even if you have a great salary, most Americans cannot afford to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave, without draining their savings. And so anyway, that's the worst. And it makes me incredibly angry, because I know it's things like that, like having children contribute to the gender-based wage gap that we see, and then also the huge difference in promotion rates between men and women. Because like in my case, I had one of my children while I was in the military, and I had to delay certain things because I was pregnant. But, male soldiers don't experience those same things, but there's not additional support given to you as a woman, as a female soldier, to try and help you compensate for those things. And then even, looking at things like education, like I had to pause my degree several times, but not having that degree held me back from certain things, looking at other employment opportunities. When I was dissatisfied with my federal contracting job, before I thought about becoming an entrepreneur, I looked at, okay, maybe I can work in a different company. And everybody was like, oh, your experience looks great. You have more actual experience than almost any of our other applicants, but you don't have a degree.
Right.
You're like, so I have more real world experience than most of your applicants, but because I don't have a degree,
you can't hire as well. I mean, I would just consider it a piece of paper because
right, and it's a barrier.
They don't even have that kind of knowledge that you have, or attributes or abilities to actually do the actual work in practice.
Right. Yeah. And so that was, those are barriers that happen, that I've come up against as, a woman who has a family. And even now with quarantine, I'm wondering what's ahead for my business, because my youngest brother, who's 15, he came out to stay with my husband and I and my kids to help us out. My husband, thankfully, he's high risk, but his company's allowed him to stay at home because of COVID, but he's going to have to go back to work eventually. And because I'm the mom, and my work is at home, I have a lot more flexibility, but it also puts my business at risk because I'm wondering, okay, how much more can I do? I have somebody who's about to start kindergarten this year and somebody who's going into third grade, and Maryland is doing, or at least my county is doing, virtual school. And then I have my other two children who aren't in school yet. So it just feels like, and I'm sure that other professional women, whether they're entrepreneurs or, kind of high-powered executives or professionals anyway, they're also probably feeling a similar pressure because society places those things on us more than it does on men.
That's an interesting concept that you just said. The last person I spoke to about these gender roles and disparities as well was that as a woman, you might find yourself that you have to take those times out and have to really find a way of balancing your life between your kids and your business. Whereas I think when you are an entrepreneur and you're working for yourself, you don't even have to make that choice because you can actually work from home. But my question to you, there was a question in there actually. My question to you was that, is there a possibility as a woman, a modern couple, where you can actually share that responsibility with your husband and then not have to necessarily think you have to take it all up on your shoulders? Or is that something that is not an option at all in your relationship?
Oh, he definitely has taken on a lot of it, especially because he can't work from home. So he's definitely, been the one out there. Like, so my kids are out in the living room right now and my brother's with them. But before my brother came to visit, he definitely takes it on. It's just the crunch will come when my husband is having to go back to work, since his work has to be done on site. There's no possibility of teleworking for his particular job. And so that is where the crunch really comes, especially if, our daycare centers aren't opening back up and things like that. So if parents are being told, hey, you got to go back to work, so if say two parents are employed and, people have to go back to work, one of them, right, is like, they're going to have to watch kids, especially in my county right now in Maryland, because we're doing virtual learning. If you don't have grandparents or somebody who can stay with your kids. So, I mean, it's definitely between us as, an individual couple, which sounds weird to say an individual couple, but looking at our relationship.
I know what you mean. You specifically as a couple. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yes, us specifically as a couple. We're talking about ways we can work out the virtual learning and everything. So maybe looking at shifting some of it to when after my husband would come home. So that way I'm not trying to manage all of the schooling by myself.
Right.
So there's definitely that. It's just, I know that like some people are like, yeah, I can work on the couch and stuff. And I'm like, like I could do some stuff. right? Like I can answer your email. I can probably post like a quick social media post or something. But because the work I do involves assessing, marketing analytics and developing content strategies, and then also creating content, it requires a certain amount of concentration. So it will be that being an entrepreneur has allowed me a certain amount of flexibility. Yeah. And that is something that I love.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin, though, that I like to look at is if there was more support kind of built in, if people were thinking of, kids and people with kids, parents with children a bit more, or looking at women who may have to sacrifice their professional opportunities a bit more, we wouldn't necessarily have to be that flexible,
right.
So that's the other side of the coin for me is like, yes, I can be flexible. And I am 100% confident I will get through this. My experiences in the military taught me that I could basically get through anything.
Yeah.
I could survive it, but should I have to work, strain and struggle that hard?
Exactly.
If, more support was built in, basically.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I know it was more diving into your personal situation there. So I do apologize for that. But
no, that's okay. It's not a secret.
So what sort of attributes then would you be able to unpack for our viewers that would be looking at you and saying, here's a woman who I call a trailblazing badass fearless female entrepreneur, my new BFF, by the way, hello, doing everything that she can because naturally, as you said, we've got this maternal instinct to protect our children and protect our family structure as well, because I'm all for that. I'm not a feminist who believes that, we have to completely renege our feminine positions just to make a point and to challenge the status quo. And that's not what I'm advocating. But what I'm advocating for is being recognized as a woman, as the female person that you are, that you were born to be, but in that same role, how you can balance being a female and accept that you are a female and still be able to contribute to the larger, bigger picture of society with ease. And so having said that, what sort of attributes would you say that you have that make you that kind of a person?
I would say that being able to look at a situation from different perspectives is really important. For a long time, women who are looking to break through those glass ceilings and to do things differently have conformed to different leadership ideals that don't suit many of us naturally. Right. So not necessarily showing empathy. So when a male executive is seen as being very confident, but a woman executive who has that same level of confidence, who brings that same energy that the male executive does, she's a B word,
Aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Or she's bossy and these types of negative things. We have to be careful about internalizing those things. I'm not bossy. I am confident and I am outspoken, which is what you said you wanted, right?
And unapologetically so.
Right. And that's the important thing. And so we have to learn how to examine situations to make sure that we are not falling into the boxes that people have created. Oh, she's not outspoken. She's just loud. She's a loud mouth. She doesn't know when to be quiet. That's the box she goes in. No, I don't accept that. I am myself and I'm outspoken. And if you're, spewing craziness, I'm going to call you on it. And that's what I'm here for. So that's one thing, is being able to analyze those situations from different perspectives and not falling into the boxes that other people have created for us, especially as women who want to be out front. The second thing I would say is to embrace your natural skills, your natural attributes. So for me, I'm incredibly empathetic, but I have a very serious sense of fairness. And I love to see, I have to see justice being done. I have to see things being fair. And I'm very tenacious, which makes for a very interesting combination when you're in the military. particularly when it comes to managing soldiers. And so my soldiers learn that pretty quick, is like, oh, if I do the wrong thing, like Sergeant Bowles, that's me, is going to make sure that I get what's coming. But if I am a great soldier, Sergeant Bowles will stand out front and shield me from all the craziness that may or may not come down from the top. And that was my empathetic side coming out. So I had my tenacious and fair side, where if my soldiers did what they weren't supposed to, okay, we have to fix that. But if they did what they were supposed to, and the leadership higher than both of us was trying to mess things up or call them in when they shouldn't, I shielded them. And I had talked back to my leadership more than once, telling them, hey, okay, I'm not calling that soldier in. You want to call him in? You call him, but I'm not calling him. And my leadership would be like, okay, fine, never mind, because they weren't going to call him either. But we have to embrace our natural traits that the traditional leadership models wouldn't necessarily have us adhere to. So empathy, by traditional leadership model standards, isn't necessarily high where it needs to be, but emotional intelligence studies now tell us that empathy and really getting in touch with your emotional intelligence is really important. And for a lot of women, we have a bit more natural intuition. Not to say that intuition can't be developed, but women seem to have more natural intuition, and that is something we should lean into. And so that kind of ties back to looking at these different situations in different ways. Am I trying to present myself in a way that is not authentically me, or am I leaning into my natural skills and bringing those to the fore? So that's definitely another piece, is leaning into your natural traits, being unapologetically yourself, as you said, and making sure we don't fall into these stereotypes that other people have created.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think you and I share those traits, because I'm empathetic, but I'm also I'm a go-getter as well, but I'm a social justice activist. So, and being empathetic is not a sign of weakness. It's actually, it comes from a place of strength, because it makes you become a mother bear. You become very protective, but at the same time, being protective can mean that sometimes you've got to use a bit of force in order to ward off the enemies that are coming into your sphere, so to speak. So I think it's an amazing combination of traits, and I really like that. Those are great attributes to have. And for any entrepreneur, like you said, sometimes you might not have them naturally, but you can learn them as well. So
yep.
That's awesome. So then the other thing, I guess the next question that I'd ask is that, going back to our conversation earlier on, I just wanted to know kind of like, how have you made it this far? What is the one thing, the core value that you've got, or core attribute that you have to sustain your business? What is it that makes you tick so well and keep your business going from the time of inception to now? What is it that keeps those wheels turning in your case?
I would have to say it's probably my tenacity. I don't give up easily. And when you initially started asking, my brain was tumbling around with ideas, and I thought, well, I am a dreamer. I'm a dreamer. But there are lots of dreamers out there in the world. But if you do not hold on to that dream with everything that you have, that idea, that spark, the thing that lights your fire, if you don't feed it on a consistent basis, it doesn't stay, the fire doesn't stay lit. Your dream will just flutter away if you don't hold on to it. Opportunities come, but if you don't do anything with them, then they go. It's like looking at the insides of a business when you're running a business. If you don't consistently do certain activities, if you don't tenaciously get after your deals and make your sales, then you don't have a business.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like marketing. You can't post a blog post once a month and then once a week and then not at all for 6 months and expect Google to love your website. You have to be consistent at it. And that's probably my thing right there. You have to be tenacious to get after these things. There are plenty of people with plenty of dreams and plenty of good ideas. But if you do not have the tenacity to go after what you want and what you want to manifest into the world, then that's all it's going to be. It's going to be a dream. It's going to be a good idea that somebody else probably does. And then you're going to be kicking yourself for it.
Yeah.
One of the best examples I remember from me being like a teenager, I used to hate the toothpaste tube, right?
Okay.
You're like, man, yeah, like I can't get all the toothpaste out. And so I used to get real clever with it and like roll it on the countertop and stuff like that. And I used to think, man, it'd be great if somebody made something that just got all the toothpaste out of the tube so I wouldn't have to get all creative with this toothpaste tube. And then lo and behold, I saw it on TV. Somebody invented this like toothpaste roller where you could insert the end of your toothpaste tube and roll it, and it just pushed the toothpaste out.
Yeah.
Sounds really silly, but it was really popular for a while.
Yeah.
And I was like, see, I acknowledged that was a problem, but I didn't get after it.
Yeah.
So
I agree with you.
That's what I think of with that. I was like, missed opportunity.
Exactly. I agree with you. And so just to go back on what you just said about tenacity, I think, and I hear what you're saying. So it's about not being lukewarm with your ideas, with your dreams, and going after your dreams with everything, every fiber of your being, and just digging in deeper and finding that pathway that you need to travel in order to make it work. And I also agree with the idea that, with tenacity also comes consistency. I have heard, I think it was Maya Angelou, the saying that she says the graveyard must be very rich because that's where all the dreams go to die. So it's absolutely true that a lot of people come up with these amazing ideas, but they don't do anything about it. So it's quite interesting. And that's a common thread as well that is going through the conversations I'm having with Wired Women. And I also just wanted to mention that this is the reason why I created Wired Women, because it's a platform where, these dreams are not only just seen, but the voices are being heard, they're being amplified. And the women that are doing amazing things like you are doing, being a mother, former military, a surgeon, to being an entrepreneur, to holding down a family of 4 plus 1, one big child, which is your husband. So amazing. I just live for every day. I live for these conversations because I believe that these conversations are going to add value and help a lot of people, of our viewers, to just, to see the bigger picture and learn something from it. So it's so amazing to have had this conversation with you as well, Ruthie. So if there was that one thing, last piece of advice that you'd give to our viewers, what would that be?
Oh, this is good. I'm glad you gave me this opportunity. I would say that, especially if you're building your business from the ground up, the dream may change. Being an entrepreneur has taught me a lot about myself and the things that I want. And I've realized over the last few years that the way I want my business to look has changed. That's not a mark of failure. That's a mark of self-awareness. And opportunities come, opportunities go, and it may change the course that you thought you were on. And then also, when you aren't clear on where it is you want to go, sometimes you just have to accept that holding pattern for a while. And what I mean by that is I was starting to look at some different ideas and different ways I could develop my business. And it started about in March with our shutdown for coronavirus. And I spent several months not sure. My business was still going along, but I wasn't clear on where I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
And then one day I had the epiphany, and I knew it was coming, but I'm impatient. But I knew it was coming. And so I kept going. I kept reading and learning. And then the idea struck me. And now I actually have something to move forward with that reignites the fire. So as you learn more about yourself, and entrepreneurship will do that to you, it's important to just remember that the dream may change forms, but it doesn't mean that you failed or anything like that. Just accept that form has changed and run with it.
I completely agree with that. Iteration is part of the game with being an entrepreneur, and having that mindset, knowing that tomorrow may not look exactly the way today does, is absolutely part of the vision and part of the attribute an entrepreneur needs to have. I mean, like you, myself, my dream has changed so much. My business model has changed so much from how I was meant to launch it in April as it was mostly a physical kind of business. And then I had to adapt that to being a digital a business, and I had to change a lot of things. So you need to constantly keep on iterating and moving with the time and staying in trend. So thank you so much for that. So Ruthie, obviously our viewers have had such immense pleasure and enjoyed listening to you so much, and I'm sure they'll be dying to know how to reach you and find you. Would you be kind enough to share your contacts, how they can find you?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is my favorite social media platform. So you could just look me up, Ruthie Bowles, on LinkedIn. And if you just, in your request, if you just mention that this is where you heard of me, you listened to the talk, then I will for sure accept your connection request. And then, but I'm also on Instagram under Defy The Status Quo Biz on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook, of course. And then my website is defythestatusquo.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. You're such a joy, Ruthie. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope to continue this conversation with you in the future. I'd like to have you as a guest one more time. Thank you so much for your time. I realize that our time zones are so in opposite directions. You're in Maryland and I'm in London. So thank you so much for joining me today.
It was my pleasure.